If you go to the theater today, to watch a massive action blockbuster, what you are really watching is essentially a multi-million-dollar safety net.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like, it is spectacular, sure, but the explosions are digital, the actors are in these high-tech harnesses, and the risk is entirely engineered away.
Right, it's very controlled.
Exactly. But I want you to imagine stepping onto a film set in 1966, where an actor has his hands bound behind his back, and the director's idea of a special effect is just detonating a real stick of dynamite right next to his head.
Yeah, literally inches away.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, 2026, and we are looking at an incredible stack of archival sources for you today.
We really are.
Yeah, my desk is just piled high. We have been poring over BBC archival interviews, YouTube documentaries, academic film papers, and some really fascinating historical articles.
There's so much material here.
There is, and our mission today is to completely peel back the curtain on the chaotic, lawless, and genuinely perilous behind-the-scenes reality of the spaghetti Western.
It's just wild stuff.
It really is. We are going to focus specifically on the near-lethal stunts of two absolute titans of the genre, which are, of course, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Django. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to really unpack it, we have to start with the cultural paradigm shift that even made these movies possible in the first place.
Right.
Because you have to understand why Italian filmmakers in the 1960s were suddenly just so obsessed with tearing down the classic American myth of the West.
Yeah, they really hated that clean-cut image.
Exactly. If you look at Hollywood Westerns prior to this, they were these tightly controlled, immaculate studio productions,
Oh, for sure. Very sanitized.
Right. You had this sweeping pastoral Americana music by composers like Aaron Copland. You had the white-hatted hero with an ironclad moral compass.
The good guy always wins. His shirt never gets dirty.
Exactly. The very comforting, romanticized myth of good triumphing over evil. But post-World War II Europe was it was a deeply cynical place.
That makes total sense.
Yeah. So filmmakers like Sergio Leone and Sergio Corbucci, they looked at that clean-cut American hero and they completely rejected it. They wanted to dismantle that myth.
They want to replace the romance with reality, or, well, at least a much uglier version.
Yeah, precisely. Academics actually refer to this new aesthetic as an anti-nostalgic, dirty glamour.
Dirty glamour, I like that.
And they meant dirty in the most literal sense imaginable. They wanted the sweat, the grime, the moral ambiguity. The environment itself had to feel oppressive.
Right.
To give you an idea of how deeply Sergio Leone believed in this philosophy, during the filming of a later movie, Once Upon a Time in the West, he actually smeared an actor's face with honey.
Wait, real honey?
Real honey. He didn't use a prop or, some kind of lighting trick. He used actual honey so that live flies would swarm and crawl all over the actor's skin while the cameras were rolling.
Oh, wow. That is so gross.
Right. But he wanted that visceral, uncontrollable reality right there on the screen.
Which is incredibly uncomfortable to even think about. But I guess it beautifully illustrates the underlying mechanism of their filmmaking.
It really does.
It wasn't just about looking gritty, it was about forcing a genuine physical reaction from the performers.
Exactly.
But pulling off that level of environmental grit requires a very specific type of production ecosystem, right? Where did they even go to build this anti-Hollywood universe?
So they went to Almeria, Spain.
Okay.
This was a desolate, deeply impoverished province down in the southeastern part of the country. And the geopolitical reality of the time is really what made this all possible.
Right, because of Franco.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spain was under the authoritarian rule of dictator Francisco Franco at the time. And to boost the struggling local economy, Franco's regime actively facilitated and welcomed foreign film productions.
Wow.
Yeah, so for European co-productions and Hollywood studios looking to cut costs, this was a goldmine. It gave them access to this sprawling, arid landscape that could easily double for the American Southwest.
Or the surface of the moon, really.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it came with incredibly cheap labor.
And the economics here are just staggering when you look at our sources. A Fistful of Dollars, the movie that essentially launched Clint Eastwood into the stratosphere as the man with no name, it was made for roughly $200,000.
Which is nothing in film terms.
Nothing. To put that into perspective for you, Hollywood's The Magnificent Seven, which was made just a few years earlier, had a budget 10 times that size.
It's crazy.
And Eastwood himself was basically a budget-friendly backup option because Sergio Leone simply couldn't afford Henry Fonda.
That's right.
Eastwood was paid about $15,000, and he actually had to bring his own wardrobe from his American television show Rawhide.
Yeah, he literally packed his own cowboy hat in his suitcase. So you have a fraction of the budget, you are shooting in a remote Spanish desert, and crucially, you are operating entirely outside the jurisdiction of Hollywood actor guilds and safety unions.
Right, none of those protections applied there.
Exactly. The mechanism that protected actors in California simply did not exist in Franco's Spain.
It sounds to me like filming in Almeria without those Hollywood unions was essentially like taking the safety guard off a table saw just so you can cut the wood faster.
There's a very apt way to put it.
Because yes, you are going to get the product out cheaper and with a rougher, more authentic edge, but eventually someone is going to lose a finger. They were essentially method acting the lawlessness of the Wild West right there behind the camera.
That is a perfect analogy. The ideological rebellion of the genre mirrored the physical rebellion of the production itself.
Yeah.
And just as a brief historical note here, that rebellious, unregulated environment, it also extended to the narratives themselves.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we see Italian westerns like Corbucci's Compañeros eventually exploring explicit political themes, embedding ideas of Marxist revolutions and class consciousness directly into the shootouts.
Wow, okay. And just to be clear, for you listening, we are remaining strictly impartial here. We aren't endorsing any specific political viewpoints.
No, absolutely not.
But it is vital to note these themes, right? Just to understand how the spaghetti Western became a vessel for these radical, often volatile new ideas that broke every established rule of the genre.
Exactly. They were tearing up the rules.
Right. They were breaking the rules ideologically, aesthetically, and logistically. But when you take that safety guard off the table saw, the first thing that gets cut is the actor.
Unfortunately, yes.
That relentless pursuit of dirty glamour had a severe biological cost. Like, the mud we see on screen wasn't just a clever set dressing to establish mood, it was a literal occupational hazard.
A very real one.
And there is no better example of this than Sergio Corbucci's 1966 masterpiece, Django.
Oh, Django is the quintessential example of the environment actively assaulting the cast.
Assaulting them, yeah.
The film is visually defined by this endless, grueling, seemingly inescapable mud. It's iconic now. But according to our sources, that mud was not some visionary artistic choice.
Wait, it wasn't?
No, it was a complete accident. Corbucci originally envisioned this bleak, snowy landscape for the film. But when they arrived in the hills outside Madrid to shoot, the weather just refused to cooperate.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the snow melted, and the freezing temperatures just left them with this relentless, knee-deep freezing sludge.
And right in the middle of that freezing sludge is the film's star, Franco Nero. Now, this is fascinating. Nero was only 23 years old at the time.
Just a kid, really.
Yeah, he actually had to wear prosthetic wrinkles on his face just to look weathered and old enough to play this hardened gunfighter.
Right.
And the so-called safety protocol they used to keep this 23-year-old from succumbing to hypothermia in the freezing mud is just mind-boggling. The crew simply kept him consistently drunk on whiskey between takes.
Which is, from a medical standpoint, one of the worst things you could possibly do.
Well, totally backwards.
Right, because alcohol dilates your blood vessels, which makes you feel warm temporarily, but it actually causes your body to lose core heat much faster. So they were essentially accelerating his risk of hypothermia while impairing his motor skills in a deeply unsafe environment.
It is a total recipe for disaster, and it culminated in one of the most famous opening scenes in cinema history, where Django is trudging through the mud, dragging this massive, incredibly heavy wooden coffin behind him.
Oh, the coffin drag is legendary.
Right.
So to get this shot, Corbucci instructed the young, exhausted, whiskey-fueled Nero to drag this genuinely heavy wooden coffin over a distant hill and past a river.
Just brutal.
And Corbucci promised him, he said he would yell cut as soon as they got the footage they needed. So Nero sets off.
Okay.
He's pulling this immense weight through the freezing sludge, fighting against the elements, giving it absolutely everything he has. He finally crosses the river, collapses in the mud from sheer physical exhaustion, and he waits to hear Corbucci yell cut. He waits and he waits.
Until he finally realizes no one is yelling cut.
Exactly. When Nero finally managed to drag himself back over the hill to where the cameras were, the entire set was empty.
No.
Yes. The crew had packed up all the equipment and simply driven away, leaving a 23-year-old actor out in the freezing wilderness as a practical joke.
Okay, I have to stop here and ask you a serious question, because this really bothers me.
Go ahead.
We sit here in 2026 and we call directors like Corbucci or Leone visionary geniuses. But if a director pulled that coffin stunt today, or, kept an actor drunk in freezing mud, they would be facing prison time for reckless endangerment.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Right. So at what point does a director's quest for gritty authenticity cross the line from visionary filmmaking into outright hazing or even abuse? Are our sources sort of glossing over actual crimes for the sake of cinema legacy?
It is a highly debated question in film history, and it's a completely valid criticism. The sources do often frame these stories as this wild Hollywood lore, but the reality was borderline sociopathic.
Yes, sociopathic is the word.
On these sets, the line between visionary filmmaking and physical abuse was completely erased. They weren't just playing mean-spirited pranks, they were cultivating an environment where real violence was completely normalized.
That's terrifying.
It is. Like in Django, there's a massive saloon fight scene
Yeah.
that Corbucci decided to shoot in one continuous take.
Okay.
Nero, who was this physically strong, deeply frustrated, and exhausted young man by this point, he got so swept up in the chaotic reality of this set that he nearly beat his stuntman unconscious for real.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Nero later admitted the stunt performer was practically lifeless at the end of the take.
And the violence wasn't just accidental either. I mean, think about the hand-crushing scene in Django.
Oh, that scene is brutal.
It's this poetically brutal sequence where the villain's men systematically smash Django's hands, meaning he later has to fire his revolver by bracing it against a cemetery cross.
Right.
The physical toll that scene required from Nero was immense. But as grueling as Corbucci's neglect was on the set of Django, it almost pales in comparison to the engineered hubris of Sergio Leone on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, definitely.
Franco Nero was fighting the elements, but Eli Wallach was actively dodging the Grim Reaper.
That is the absolute perfect way to delineate the two directors. Because Corbucci's danger was born of chaotic neglect, but Leone's danger was meticulous and entirely engineered.
He planned it.
He did. He actively put his actors in the crosshairs of live explosives and heavy machinery. Eli Wallach, who played Tuco, the ugly of the film's title, he survived a series of incidents on that set that honestly defy belief.
So walk us through this, because the mechanics of these stunts are terrifying. Let's look at the hanging scene first.
Yeah.
How did Leone practically achieve the shot of Tuco being saved from the noose?
Okay, so the script calls for Tuco to be sitting on a horse with a noose around his neck and his hands tied behind his back.
Right.
Clint Eastwood's character, Blondie, shoots the rope from a distance, cutting Tuco free just before the horse bolts.
Classic Western trope.
Exactly. But to capture this without visual effects, Leone's crew embedded a real, highly sensitive explosive charge inside the rope, positioned mere inches above Eli Wallach's head.
Inches from his head.
Yes. And Wallach, who was a classically trained stage actor and absolutely not a stuntman, he recognized the danger immediately.
Yeah, obviously.
Right. So he sensibly asked Leone if they could pack the horse's ears with cotton wadding so the deafening sound of the explosive wouldn't startle the animal.
It is a completely rational request.
Entirely rational. But Leone, communicating through broken French, just brushed off the concern. He assured Wallach the horse was trained and didn't need the cotton.
Uh-oh.
So the cameras roll, the explosive detonates with a massive bang,
Mhm.
the rope snaps, and the horse, predictably, is absolutely terrified.
Of course it is.
It bolts at a full, uncontrollable sprint, taking off into the Spanish desert for over a mile. And Eli Wallach is clinging to the saddle for his life, with his hands completely bound behind his back.
I mean, if that horse had booked, or if Wallach had lost his balance, falling at that speed with bound hands would have snapped his neck.
Oh, it would have been instantly fatal.
It would have been a fatal accident. But, incredibly, the danger only escalates from there. We move from explosives to a literal freight train.
Yes, the train sequence. So later in the narrative, Tuco is handcuffed to a Union soldier, Corporal Wallace. Tuco manages to knock Wallace unconscious, but he still needs to break the handcuffs.
Right, he's still attached.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he drags the unconscious soldier to a set of active train tracks. The plan is to lay the heavy lead chain connecting the cuffs horizontally across the steel rail and wait for a passing train to sever the chain with its steel wheels.
Now, I want to emphasize to you, the listener, how this would be done today. You would film the actor on a soundstage, you would film a train separately, and you would composite them together in post.
Or use a fake prop train.
Right, a lightweight prop. But in 1966, Leone used a real, massive, hundreds of tons steam locomotive.
A real train?
And to prove to the audience that there was no stunt double being used, Leone demanded that Wallach lie in the dirt and keep his head just inches away from the track for a tight, continuous close-up as the train rushed past.
And here's where the lack of safety oversight almost resulted in a tragedy. What Leone and the production crew failed to realize, because no one had actually properly inspected the train, was that this specific locomotive was equipped with heavy, protruding metal steps that extended outward from the passenger carriages, very low to the ground.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the cameras are rolling. Wallach places his head near the track. The train roars past at high speed, successfully severing the lead chains. But as it passes, those heavy metal steps sweep through the air, decapitating Eli Wallach by an incredibly small margin.
That is insane.
If he had raised his head even a single inch during that take, he would have killed instantly.
It is genuinely harrowing to watch that scene today, knowing you are watching a man millimeters away from death.
It's chilling.
And the peril wasn't just mechanical either. It came from his own co-stars. Lee Van Cleef, who played the bad, had to throw a heavy metal shovel at Wallach in one scene.
Right, the shovel throw.
Now, Van Cleef had a tragic backstory himself. His acting career had been entirely derailed by a severe car accident in 1958 that completely shattered his knee, forcing him to actually take up painting just to survive before Leone gave him this comeback role.
Wow.
So you have an actor with compromised physical mobility throwing a heavy, real metal spike at Wallach's head, and it misses his forehead by mere inches.
Just inches.
But the most bizarre near-death experience Wallach faced didn't involve explosives or trains at all. It involved a bottle of lemon soda.
Ah, yes, the acid soda incident.
Yep.
So this happens during the film's climax in the sprawling Sad Hill Cemetery. Tuco is frantically digging up a grave filled with canvas bags of gold coins. Leone wanted a dramatic visual where Tico strikes the bags with his shovel and they immediately burst open, spilling gold everywhere.
Makes sense.
Right, but the canvas was too tough. So as a practical solution, the crew brushed the seams of the canvas bags with a highly corrosive acid to weaken the fabric.
Which, I mean, makes sense from a problem-solving perspective, but the execution of that idea is where the unregulated chaos just rears its head again.
Exactly, because after applying the acid, a crew member haphazardly poured the leftover corrosive liquid into an empty glass bottle of lemon soda and just left it sitting near the set.
You've got to be kidding me.
And lemon soda happened to be Eli Wallach's absolute favorite beverage.
Oh, no.
Wallach, who is parched and exhausted from digging in the hot Spanish sun for hours, sees the bottle, picks it up, takes a massive swig, and immediately suffers severe chemical burns to the inside of his mouth.
It is an absolute miracle the man survived the production, let alone live to the age of 98.
It really is.
But this raises a really profound point about the art that was created in this crucible, because Tuco is the beating heart of the good, the bad, and the ugly. He is a bandit, a liar, and a swindler, yes. But unlike Eastwood's character, or Van Cleef's character, who are driven purely by greed and sadism, Tuco is a survivor who understands human connection.
That's very true.
He has that beautiful monologue about knowing there's always a brother somewhere who won't refuse him a bowl of soup. He values brotherhood.
That is a brilliant observation. Wallach brought this squirming, desperate, incredibly witty resilience to the character. And when you look at the mechanics of what he was enduring on set, you know, the explosives, the trains, the acid, you have to realize that his brilliant performance was fundamentally informed by his biological reality.
I wasn't acting terrified, he was terrified.
Exactly. The frantic energy of Tuco wasn't just great acting. It was a byproduct of a man whose central nervous system was constantly in fight or flight mode. It is a flawless, if highly unethical, blending of high art and literal survival.
He was a survivor on screen, and he had to be one off screen just to finish the movie.
Obviously.
But as wild as it was for individual actors to navigate this danger, the peril scaled up exponentially when it came to the massive set pieces. Because all of this physical danger was compounded by an environment where almost nobody could even communicate with each other.
Oh, the language barrier on spaghetti western sets was immense, and it functioned as a massive safety hazard all on its own.
I can imagine.
You had international casts drawn from Spain, Italy, Hungary, Germany, and the United States. Sergio Leone, the man orchestrating all this danger, spoke absolutely zero English.
So how does a director with zero English instruct Clint Eastwood on the nuances of a gunfight?
Primarily through aggressive miming. Literally.
Yeah.
Leone would physically act out the scenes, making the facial expressions and just saying, "Watch me." For the dialogue, because there was no common language, actors would often just stare at their scene partner, wait for the other person's mouth to stop moving, and then deliver their own line in their native tongue.
That's hilarious.
Right. An American would speak English, an Italian would answer in Italian. They all knew the entire film was going to be completely redubbed in a sound studio months later anyway.
It was an orchestra of organized chaos. But that communication breakdown goes from being a quirky behind-the-scenes anecdote to a lethal liability when high explosives are introduced.
Yes, definitely.
Let's talk about the bridge. For the American Civil War sequence in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, they didn't use miniatures. They built a colossal, historically accurate bridge out of heavy wood and stone.
They really did. And they hired a captain from the Spanish army to oversee its destruction. They loaded this massive structure with thousands of pounds of real, highly volatile dynamite.
Unbelievable.
Leone had 5 separate cameras set up at various vantage points to capture this once-in-a-lifetime explosion. The coordination required for a stunt of this magnitude is staggering, even with a shared language.
And because there wasn't a shared language, disaster strikes. There's a miscommunication over the radio with the Spanish army captain. Before the cameras are even up to speed, before anyone is fully prepared, boom.
Boom.
The captain triggers the explosives prematurely. The bridge is completely obliterated.
And the captain was reportedly devastated and very apologetic, but, the damage was done. The production had to halt entirely, and they spent 3 full weeks completely rebuilding this massive bridge from scratch, just so they could blow it up a second time.
So 3 weeks later, they're ready for take 2. And this is where Clint Eastwood's survival instincts really shine. Leone tells Eastwood and Wallach exactly where they need to stand for the shot, which is uncomfortably close to the bridge.
Too close.
Way too close. Eastwood, who by this point has developed a deeply ingrained, very healthy skepticism of Sergio Leone's safety protocols, he takes a look around the set. He notices 2 men walking up to the mark, and they are wearing Tuco and Blondie's exact wardrobe. They are stunt doubles, or devils, as they called them on Italian sets.
Which is never, ever a reassuring sign for a lead actor. If the production is bringing in the devils, you are in the danger zone.
Exactly. So Eastwood looks at the devils, and then he looks around for the director. He asks, where is Sergio going to be for this explosion?
Smart man.
Right. He scans the horizon and finally spots Leone hiding way, way off in the distance, safely barricaded behind a heavily reinforced, faraway camera bunker. Eastwood immediately turns to Wallach and says, nope, we're going to go stand exactly where Sergio is standing. He demands they move the camera back to Leone's location.
And that situational awareness quite literally saves his life, and likely Wallach's as well. Because when the bridge finally detonates for the second time, it is a spectacular, violently uncontrollable explosion. Baseball-sized, kilo-heavy chunks of jagged rock and splintered wood fly hundreds of feet through the air.
Just flying shrapnel.
Yeah, and they rain down and completely obliterate the exact spot where Eastwood and Wallach had originally been told to stand. In fact, a chunk of debris tore through one of the cameras and nearly killed an assistant cameraman who was stationed there.
It is terrifying to think about, and it adds a completely new layer of context to Clint Eastwood's performance, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like, the legendary cool detachment of the man with no name, that iconic squint, the slow movements, the unflappable demeanor. We praise it as a brilliant acting choice, but it was also a biological necessity. He was a man constantly calculating his surroundings, trying to figure out if his director was about to accidentally blow him up.
It is the ultimate fusion of character and reality.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because you look at this entire production, you have actors speaking 4 different languages. You have directors wildly miming. You have massive bridges blowing up prematurely. You have actors drinking acid and dragging coffins until they pass out in freezing mud.
Total mess.
By every metric of filmmaking, this should have resulted in a disjointed, chaotic disaster of a movie. But it didn't. It resulted in a masterpiece. And the mechanism that saved it was the music.
Ennio Morricone.
Yes. Morricone's legendary avant-garde score is the mechanism that holds this entire international mess together. Think about it. He didn't use the sweeping pastoral orchestral strings of Hollywood. He used grunts, whistles, whip cracks, electric guitars, and mariachi trumpets. So exactly how did his music function as the glue for these films?
Well, it functioned both practically and emotionally.
Okay.
Practically, the erratic staccato nature of the music, the sudden whip cracks and whistles, it helped mask the terrible dubbing.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. When an actor's mouth isn't perfectly matching the dialogue, a sudden, sharp musical cue draws the audience's attention away from the visual disconnect. But emotionally, Morricone's music was as chaotic, dirty, and rule-breaking as the production itself.
It matched the energy.
Exactly. When you have actors from different continents with entirely different acting methodologies, Morricone's score provided a singular, driving, emotional heartbeat. It literally translated the physical grid of the production into an audio experience. It unified the disparity.
It is absolutely brilliant. So what does this all mean for us today? When we look back at the legendary cool of the spaghetti western, this genre that so successfully deconstructed the romantic myth of the American West, we have to realize that this artistic breakthrough was only possible because the making of the films was as wild, dangerous, and lawless as the stories they were telling on screen.
That is the ultimate takeaway from our sources today. You simply cannot separate the aesthetic triumph of these films from the harrowing reality of their production.
You really can't.
The grit you see on screen wasn't acting. The exhaustion in Franco Nero's eyes was real fatigue. The frantic, squirming energy of Eli Wallach was a byproduct of a man constantly fighting for his biological survival.
Right.
When you understand the historical context of what these people endured, the lack of unions, the extreme weather, the live explosives, it completely changes the way you watch these classics. You're no longer just watching actors hit their marks on a soundstage. You are watching a documented testament to human endurance.
It makes every drop of sweat, every flinch, and every squint feel earned, because it absolutely was.
And this raises a deeply important question for you, the listener, to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive.
Let's hear it.
If the classic Hollywood westerns were tightly controlled, highly regulated studio productions designed to build a comforting moral myth of the American West, and if the spaghetti westerns successfully tore that myth down by utilizing real grit, genuine danger, and absolute chaos, what does today's incredibly safe, highly regulated CGI-heavy filmmaking say about the myths we are building for ourselves right now?
Are we just engineering safe illusions? It brings us right back to that master illusionist on the Vegas stage,
Right.
We love the spectacle of a modern blockbuster. We love the roller coaster precisely because we know the harness is locked tight and no one is actually in danger. But there will always be something undeniably mesmerizing, something inherently magnetic about watching a film where, for a fact that the people on screen are actually risking everything.
The danger was the magic.
And they managed to capture that magic on film forever. That is all for today's deep dive. Keep questioning the illusions, and we will see you next time.